Or can I call you Shaquan?
So I prefer Coach Shaquan.
Okay.
We're friends though, so you can call me Shaquan.
Okay, okay. But I want to talk more about the Coach Shaquan.
Yes.
So how did that name come to be?
about?
Yes, how did that name come about?
Wow. So Coach Shaquan actually was a suggestion by my friend. I say she's my friend, my cousin friend. Yes. We were in business together, started a blog called A House to Love. This was in 2012. And when I was making the transition from corporate America to entrepreneurship, she was like, okay, I'm like, I need a name. You know, not that Shaquan needs needs any support.
It's memorable.
It is memorable, right? All the greats have unique names.
That's right.
And since it was in coaching, and coaching was such a big buzzword then and now, she was like, why don't you just go by Coach Shaquan? I'm like, really? Like, I need a stage name. She's like, Coach Shaquan. I'm like, let's go for it. And it's stuck. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I feel that it's approachable for you. Do you know what I mean? I feel like you are on my team before I even get to know you.
I love that. Oh, I love that.
And then when I actually meet you,
yes.
and you have the essence and the personality to back it up, I was just so excited to meet you on the panel that we did for the Mosaic Ceilings event.
Yes.
And I knew, I said, this is somebody that I have to have more conversation with. So I'm really glad to have you here with us today for our Social Synergy Launchpad conversation.
Yes, thank you.
So we really just always like to talk about, like, where did it all start?
Oh, where did it all start?
We all want to know.
I want to know. Now, how far do you want me to go back? To the beginning?
Well, let's go back to the start of your entrepreneurial journey.
Because if not, I was going to say May 19th, 1970s. No, okay, not that
It was
far
a
back.
great year.
It was a great year on a Thursday.
Right.
So entrepreneurship, it's interesting because I tell people I didn't necessarily set out to be an entrepreneur. I was working corporate America in inside sales. And after the birth of my second son in 2011, as I mentioned, we had been doing a blog at that time, my friend, my business partner and I. And it was like, okay, there's something I want to do. I know that there's something more. I just wasn't interested, had lost interest, had lost passion in what I was doing. And so I knew that relationships was something that I was big on. It had gotten to the point where I was in the grocery store and the strange woman in her 60s, and she's a white woman in her 60s is talking to me about her husband. I'm like, okay. Or the nail tech, and I'm like, okay. Even, friends and families, the same. And so I really felt like I was the go-to person to have conversations about relationships. And so I started doing some research on going back to school to get a master's in counseling. And then I have to remember, school just, come on, be honest with yourself, Shaquan. Think of school just, I wasn't a student in the sense of being disciplined enough to sit down and study. And with having what I say, a whole husband and two young children, it just wasn't feasible for me at the time. And so, quite honestly, the algorithms on my computer started coming up, and coaching came up. And I'm like, well, what is this about? So I did some research, found a couple of programs, did some interviews with them, and then I said, well, I can't do that because the program that I wanted to do was going to cost about $10,000. And I'm like, can't do it. So I went through a whole another year of just being angry at the job, and it was affecting my marriage. So I'm like, okay, the marriage is kind of just going through that phase. I wasn't really connected with my children like I wanted to be because I was bringing work home. I was having anxiety attacks, was just being angry. And it was very difficult being, a black woman in a corporate space, not in leadership, just being a worker bee is what I felt like. And I remember in January of 2013, my friend said, well, what about that coaching program? I'm like, girl, I can't afford that. Like, I can't. And she was like, well, if you don't invest in yourself, who else will? Yeah. And that actually was the turning point. I was like,
That aha moment for you.
That aha moment. Just a very simple statement. Yeah. Very simple.
Yeah. And it's that point where, your time lines up, with your passion. And, again, your resources, to be honest. It has to be, you have to have made that investment, financially to be in that place, in that space, to be able to take that risk, But I like what you said, and that is something that I find that is common with a lot of entrepreneurs, that they were non-traditional learners,
Yes.
And so the formal education experience was not always the greatest for them.
No.
You know, if you're born a risk taker, you know, if you're born a connector,
Yes.
sometimes the traditional setting really doesn't align, you know, with that.
Yeah.
So, you know, if there are parents out there that are listening to this and
Yes.
you see this in your children, it may not necessarily be a bad thing.
Absolutely.
You might be developing a young entrepreneur.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my parents are in their 70s, right? So this just gives you their age and when they grew up. So my mother is a college graduate. My dad, after high school, he went to the Army and then came back and was employed with the post office until retirement. My mother's an educator, retired educator. So from their perspective, all throughout school, even high school, I never had a job. I didn't have to work. Their thing was your responsibility, your job is to work, to go to school and get an education. When I went to college, it was you're going to major in business because you need to get a degree in business so that you can work for, you know, at a company. There was not a sense of entrepreneurship or that spirit of doing it on your own that was really embedded in me. And so that was the belief system that I had, that I'm supposed to work for this company and work your way up through the ranks. So the interesting part of it is when I sat down, again, I got a whole husband and 2 kids, and I'm nervous to tell my parents, like, I'm getting ready to be, because the story was I was on the verge of getting fired. And so my mom was like, you better do what you need to do to keep that good job. And so that was the tagline, the good job, you know. And I just remember being tied to that for so long, that concept of good job, that starting on my own or having a business of my own was just completely foreign to me. Completely foreign.
I love how you shared on the panel. You know, everybody talked about how they got into entrepreneurship. My entry was not
let's be clear.
all, yes, it wasn't all warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there are different experiences that sort of launch us. You know, that's what this conversation is about. How are you launched into that space?
Yeah.
And so there's all types of coaching
Yes.
that you could have done.
Yes.
So can you talk more about the type of coaching that you do?
Absolutely. So I'm a certified relationship coach, and basically I study people. I study how people connect, communicate, and behave in their personal and professional relationships. And so life is all about relationships. And the beautiful part about it is that having a relationship with someone allows you really a mirror to see yourself. And so in my business, in my company, is PRT Coaching Services. We are a life and relationship expert firm. And so we focus on self-awareness strategies and teaching people in 3 different areas. So there's a personal, how do you have a personal relationship with yourself? Again, having that experience where I felt lost inside of myself, felt like I wasn't living the life that God had designed for me. And so knowing as a wife and as a mother, there was that piece of relationship with myself that was missing, okay? And so we teach those strategies on how do you build better relationship with yourself first, right? And so the next piece of it is the intimate. So I work with a lot of husband and wives or people in relationships, couples in relationships, and really teaching them how to stop, you know, you need to, this is this, because it's easy to point out, you know, you're married, so you know how we can easily point out in our spouses what's wrong or what they need to fix. And so we focus more on, again, the self pieces. How can I step back? What is it about me that makes my husband not want to come at home after work? Or what about me makes him want to sit in the driveway, you know? Or what about, as a husband, what about me makes my wife just completely shut down and not want to communicate with me and would rather be with her girlfriends? So it's really about those more self-awareness strategies. Yeah. And then the piece that that just gives me the biggest piece of power is going into companies and organizations and teaching on energy leadership. Energy leadership is a effective way of developing a personally style of leadership. It helps you to become more productive. It helps team leadership. It helps to build the gap between management and employees. So it's a really powerful transformational tool that I've been just very blessed to go into these companies and share that teaches people what it truly means to be a leader within yourself so that you can inspire and motivate others.
Yeah, you know, oftentimes with leaders, they are quote unquote knighted into these positions. Do you know what I mean? And they're not necessarily developing the leadership skills that they need to, or doing the self-assessment to determine what kind of leader they are. And so, we assume that people are in positions of power because they are fully equipped to do it. But there are lots of reasons why people end up in various seats. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes there was they were the best option.
Yes, yes.
The lesser of the evils.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or they knew someone, or, so it's important to do that work. So that's awesome that you're providing that as a resource for companies.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that I say is we are either a leader by choice or by default, to your point. Everyone just doesn't say, I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to, it's really sometimes you have to lead, right? Given the position is open and they need someone to fill it. So one of the things that is very important is that we are all leaders at some aspect. And if you don't see yourself as a leader, then you're limited in your thinking. And then that is how you show up. And we're talking about in the organization and outside. If you don't feel that you're a leader of your household, then you're not going to lead. Our children, if we don't teach them that they're leaders, then they will learn to follow and to learn to mimic more so than take that leadership position. So it's very, very important that we stress to everybody, no matter age, gender, none of that, what position it is, we're all leaders. Yeah.
So we like to use our platform for Social Synergy to talk about equity in the entrepreneurship community, the obvious gaps, that exist for women of color, the diversity gaps that exist. And there are lots of organizations that are out there doing the work to help to close those gaps. And so oftentimes there are these perceived understandings about what the needs are. So when we have the opportunity to talk to people that are in the trenches, that are actually doing the work, from your seats, from your lens, what are some of the needs that you see in helping us as a city, us as an entrepreneurship community become more diverse and more supportive of one another?
Yeah, great question. So being a relationship coach, I am an extreme extrovert, and I am much more heartfelt than I am analytical. So the first thing I see is that there's a great need for compassion. We are missing compassion. So this is completely off the board. If you go into an organization, more likely they're not going to talk about compassion, right? Part of that understanding is having compassion for people and where they've come from and those experiences. And so one of the concepts that I think is missing is just understanding that I'm different from you, and that's okay. So how can I better understand you and then come to a place where I'm asking questions, not judging, knowing the difference between a judgment and an opinion. And really saying, okay, so now that I understand you, now how can we communicate on what the actual problem is? Not the symptoms, as I call it. Let's go to the source, right? Let's take off that Band-Aid and really talk about that. And from my experience, it goes back to this concept, which I call check your BS.
I love,
Yes.
You have some other acronyms that are
do.
quite interesting.
You like
that
Yes, so check your BS. And again, I'm taking a different approach because these are conversations that people aren't having, they don't even know to have, right? So check your BS stands for belief system, or whatever has you stuck in a pattern or way of thinking that's not allowing you to reach the end goal. So when we talk about equity, what is it about my belief system? Maybe I need to check my BS on what it really means to have, equity. Or what does it really mean for diversity and inclusion? Just because you have one minority or woman of color or someone does not really say that you are completely diverse.
It's a box to check.
It's a box to check. It might look good for you on paper. It might be able, let's talk real, it might be able to get you a tax break. Just to say that I'm a woman-owned business or a black-owned business because you have someone in that position. So let's really check our BS, our belief system, about what it really, really means to be inclusive and to be diverse. Those are the conversations that I would love to see us have in our community. because it really brings people down to an equal level of thinking. And then how we think then ultimately affects how our actions play out.
Yeah. There's so many strategies out there, but oftentimes we just need to go back to the basics. I was watching the news this morning, and the CEO of LinkedIn was on there, and that's his leadership style. He is noted for being a compassionate leader, and the shift that it made in his life, even just as a more dynamic leader, understanding people's needs, and creating a space of trust and creating a space that's fun, and so it sounds like that's not a profound option, but it really is.
It really is.
We connect on a human level. We are serving each other as human beings. So those are the simple things sometimes that we overlook.
Absolutely. One of the things I say is that, emotions are not allowed in the boardroom, and not in the workplace. If you come in, you're weak. And the thing is when I'm looking at another woman who I know that's a wife and a mother, and we're at work, I know I can be understanding of some of the challenges that you have. Just thinking of a leader, maybe it's a male leader who has an employee who's a woman, and that's a wife. Okay, so I was late to work this morning because, my 3-year-old decided that they didn't want to put the shoes on or something. I've seen in instances where that male leader is just like, it doesn't matter. You were late and that's a markdown or something tagged against it. Where's the compassion in that? Like, you have a wife, right? So you understand how that can be. So there's very interesting to understand that power is not leadership. And sometimes that, check your BS, right?
I love that.
And that's a hashtag. So for you guys out there following, that's a hashtag check your BS. And it's really that concept of just taking time to check what you believe, challenge what you think, and then make a choice on how you want to show up as a leader, as an individual. What mark will you make that's going to make a difference to help impact someone as opposed to impair them or stop them from making moves. It's just, it's not what we need to be doing at this time.
You're right. And I guess, that leads us to our last question. The topic, our focus is really equipping entrepreneurs and inspiring and encouraging them to take the leap.
Yes.
You have this gift, you have this passion. Just take the leap and do it. So what would you say to someone that's on that edge, that knows that the 9-to-5 is not feeding them anymore? What would you say to them to encourage them to just do it?
Oh, so there's a lot of Coach Shaquanisms coming up, right? One of the things, and I'll share this from the organization that I worked for 13 years, one of the things that they said was be passionate about what you do or do something else. And so if you are sitting there and you know that you have a burning desire to do something, it's so important to look at that. What are you most passionate about? If you're sitting in a workspace, in a business or a corporation, and you know that you have a passion to do something else, and you ask yourself, be passionate about what you do or do something else, the next thing is to think, what's your protest? Everyone wasn't made to be on that front line. They weren't born to do that. And I think sometimes we have that burning desire to do something, and you feel like it has to look like someone else's protest. It has to look like someone else's journey, someone else's leap. So I shared this on the panel. So and I'm going to share this here. People say, well, what do you do? I do it scared. You have to do it scared, okay? And so this is what I say. Do something every day.
I love this.
Do something every day that scares the shit out of you.
Yes.
So people are like, oh my God, Coach Shaquan, did you? Yes. You have to do something every day that scares the shit out of you, right? And so the acronym, because I'm a words girl, I love words, okay? So the acronym for shame, that scares the shame, the hurt, the insecurities, and the truth.
Like, that's a book.
Is that a book?
That's a book.
Okay, we're going to claim that.
That right there, like, I would pick that up immediately.
We're going to claim that.
That's it.
In the name of Jesus.
Yes.
We're going to claim that.
Yes. Oh, my God.
Because the concept is that, think about it. So if I'm sitting here, right, and I'm concentrating, and my mind is elsewhere, I'm focused on something else. If someone were to jump out at you, and it's like, oh my God, and usually you're like, oh my God, you scared the shit out of me, right? And so your heart's beating fast and you're scared, and then all of a sudden it goes away. So that's the point. When you feel like you are at that stage and you know that your heart is beating fast and you're focused on something and something scares you, do something to scare the shit out of you. You have to do something. If it is making a post on social media that's been burning inside of you, if it's making a cold call to someone to ask if you can meet them for coffee or lunch, if it is writing down your thoughts on the journal and submitting it to the Huffington Post, whatever it is, if it is making a product and going to pitch it somewhere, if it is just telling someone that you have an idea, someone that you trust and that you know that you're truly connected with, do something every day that scares the shit out of you.
I love that. I love that. And I love you, girl, for
I
being
love
here
you too.
today.
Isn't this so wonderful?
This is awesome.
Thank
and I
you
know
so
people
much.
want to follow you. They want to hear more because I want to hear more too
Oh,
from
I'm
Coach
so
Shaquan.
excited. Yes, so I can be reached on social media. I am on LinkedIn. It's Coach Shaquan, or you can look up Shaquan Grove. Both will come up. Instagram and Facebook, all under Coach Shaquan. And hashtag, it's big on Facebook, hashtag check your BS. Yes. My website is coachshaquan.com. And my email is coach@coachshaquan.com.
And spell Shaquan.
Yes, child, because
make sure we
it's not,
get it right.
It's not simple. Thank you, Mom. So Shaquan is spelled SHAQUAN.
I love it.
Yes, so
I
that's
love
Coach
it.
Shaquan.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you so
here
much.
today.
I appreciate it.